everyone, and welcome to a new podcast episode of JessSayin. It's me again, your faithful host, Jessica Steiner. And I am talking today with a woman named Raditia, who is the founder of Mindful Being, which focuses on unleashing an individual's aspirations and capabilities in being a parent. Hey, Raditia, how are you?
Hey, Jessica, how are you? I'm doing fine, thanks.
Good. Well, I'm doing good too. And I am so happy that you're with me today talking about everything. So thankful that you're a guest on my podcast today. I can't wait to dive into everything mindful being. Even though I am not a parent myself to a child, I know a lot of my listeners are. So I thought, this is a great way to get your story out there and see what it's all about. And so I was just super excited to see what this is all about and everything. So I initially connected with Raditia on Instagram through a mutual contact we have. You reached out to me after I did a live coaching session with our mutual friend. And you just said, hey, I would just love to chat more about what you were talking about in the live coaching session. My vision for the future, just being successful entrepreneurs, and basically just doing what I love. So here we are.
Yay! Thank you so much, Jessica, for allowing me to come on here and share my story and the background and what my mission is all about.
Yes, love it. So before we let Raditia tell us about mindful being, as you faithful listeners know, I like to get a little background information on my guests, so we just know a little bit more about them. So could you just tell us, what is your full name?
So my full name as of now, because after I got married, I have a different name, is Raditia Lasry.
Okay, and when and where were you born?
I'm born in Switzerland, July 23rd, 1979.
Oh, awesome. Switzerland. Okay, so where do you live now?
So now I live about 30 to 40 minutes outside of New York City, north of New York City.
Awesome. And how long have you been in New York?
So I got to the States, and particularly New York, about 17 years ago. I came here with the interest of pursuing dance, and not knowing that the dance world in the States is a whole lot different than it is in Switzerland. So I was a little bit overwhelmed with that. So yeah, that brought me here to the States, to New York City for that. Yeah.
Wow. So you were actually raised in Switzerland, you in a whole different country.
Yes. For how old was I? 23 years. Yes.
Wow. Cool. And you said you came to the States to pursue dance. So were you anywhere else besides New York?
No, I came to New York and I was there, like the training was for 1 year. And then I met my husband and then our relationship started. And so that's why I'm still here.
I love that. Do you have a nickname that you go by or just anything like that?
Well, it's funny because I don't have a addressed, nickname. I know that many people always had trouble with my name. And I would always just tell them, it's like, whatever you think you want to call me, call me. So I would have like a variety of different nicknames, from Radi to, like in Swiss German, of course, and German, it's like a little different. And then, some just had different names for me here.
I kind of like Ratty. That's kind of cool. I like that. Raditia is beautiful too. I just, it's just different, not something I hear every day. So I was like, it's just a beautiful name. So, do you practice any type of religion or spirituality?
I personally don't directly, like I grew up more Christian. I mean, we would go to church before Christmas, like not on a regular basis. My grandparents, like, so my mom is Indonesian, my dad is German.
Okay.
And so when my grandparents in Indonesia, so I think it's my grandfather, he's Christian, and then my grandmother is Muslim. And so that's some part. And then I grew up as a Christian, but I never really practiced it as a religion. So I was very open to any religions in that way.
So do you speak other languages?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what languages do you speak?
Well, German and Swiss Germans are like my mother tongue.
Oh, cool.
So I grew up speaking German with my parents, and then Swiss German with my friends and surroundings. And then I learned French in school, and I speak some Indonesian through my mom, and so English and French through school.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I took German in high school, and it was I loved it. And I still remember certain things, or I kind of remember the overall feel of it, but I would love to dive back into learning German again. I love that language. I don't know what it is, but it's just I don't know.
If you ever go back, call me. You can have a conversation.
Yeah, I need to hire you as my guide. I need to hire you as my personal translator guide. Because I know some words, and I can get around. I think I could if I started refreshing, but I'm not anywhere near ready to travel alone in a foreign country.
So yeah, if you ever go, I have a lot of people that, live in Germany or other German speaking areas. So,
awesome.
Just let me know.
That's awesome. Okay. So tell us about your family here in the United States with you.
Well, they're rather small. They're always small in my surroundings, but here I have my husband and my son. Mm-hmm. That's the immediate, and then my mother-in-law, who lives in New York, about also 45 minutes from here.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, like the immediate family,
Right. Because it sounds like you have family kind of all over the world in different countries.
Yes, so mainly my parents live in Switzerland. My grandfather used to live in Germany, and then he passed away now, but he then moved to Austria where my aunt lives now. And so that's there. And then my grandparents used to live in Indonesia. They passed away many years ago. Mm-hmm. And so my aunt, who used to live in Indonesia, now lives in the Toronto area. And so we're all a little bit around. And I mean, my husband's family, they're, the distant family is pretty big, but we're not very close or so.
Cool. Oh, I love stuff like this, Okay, so take us through a typical day in your life, Raditia, or is there a typical day in your life?
Good question. I mean, yes, there is some typical, cornerstones throughout the day. And then in between, it all is depends on the day. But I usually, wake up at a certain time. Today actually was one of the ideal days. This is how I wish my days would be most of the time. Yes, which is funny because I woke up this morning, it's oh, this is great. So I woke up around 6, which is preferred for me because then I'm up before everybody. Mm-hmm. And then I have I practice meditation in the first, as if I wake up at 6, my goal is to close to 7. So for 30 to 45 minutes, and then do some yoga for 15 minutes, which all of this happened today.
Awesome.
I'm so happy. And then, my son wakes up, then, we have some things happening, and then all of a sudden it's 7:20ish, we get ready, go down, have breakfast. And then sometimes he has school in school and sometimes he's home.
Okay.
And then I have a second meditation session with other people at 8:30 till 9. So these like the
wow.
cornerstones.
Yeah. You're busy.
Busy. Yeah, the mornings are always pretty busy till 9. And then my son does his school things. My husband is working. We're all at home,
Nice.
half of the time. And then, I have my calls, or I work on some projects, or I, write things, or, anything that comes up for work. And then there's like lunchtime around 11:30, 12ish, depending. Yeah. And then we move on through the day, the afternoon. Sometimes if he's in school, I pick my son up, and then we'll do the rest of the things. And around 5:15, 5:30, I'll make dinner. We'll have dinner, and then, end the day with some games, or we watch something together, and then, take bath, go to sleep. And then for me, lately, so I used to love to watch, I still would love to watch all the rubbish stuff. Some people will call it rubbish, from like Real Housewives. And
yes, I'm a huge Real Housewives fan. Huge.
That's awesome. And so, but I happened to feel like I was just going to bed way too late. So for me, like every time I have an issue for not it to being this perfect day as today is because of the time I go to bed. Meaning I had to make some sacrifices at the end of the day. So I deleted all my shows.
Wow.
So I'm like, I have nothing to watch. I mean, things that I watch with my husband, like 90 Day Fiance, which is one of the other kind of shows that is like, oh, and so, so I deleted those very recently, just the past 2 weeks ago.
That's powerful.
Yeah. So a lot has changed, including what I mentioned to you before this call about social media. And so I'm taking a lot of switches to, what we're talking about in a little bit about mindful being. And for me, what I do for a living is what I am passionate about. And what I realized is like, if I'm going to teach other people how to do it, I have to be doing it, and that was always my go-to. And so that's why I did all these changes in the past few weeks. And it happened more because I realized that I just don't have the patience and the energy and all these other things that I should be having towards the people I love. And so that just made me realize, okay, done, enough. Maybe it changes in a couple months again, but for now, this is the
That's my new boundary. This is a new boundary.
Yeah, so that I can go to bed around 10:30 to close our day. What my day is like. Yeah,
I love that, Raditia. Honestly, I mean, like, that sounds like you have an amazing life. It sounds like you get to be with your family, and it sounds like you're working on your business and you're at home, and you said sometimes you go pick up your son. That sounds like a beautiful life. I mean, what people don't want to be home with their family making dinner? I mean, I guess with COVID now, I mean, more people might be doing that, but really, I mean, it's difficult to get all the family members together sometimes to sit down for a meal. So I love that. Okay, so I want to dive into everything mindful being. So Raditia, tell our listeners, what is mindful being?
I mean, first and foremost, mindful being is focusing on raising awareness through mindfulness, being more aware of the present moment as many times as we can throughout the day. That's like the core. With that core comes focusing on our breath on a regular basis. And having said that, I mean, and as you introduced, it's like about parents, so just recently, maybe a couple of months in now, I started to focus on the mindful parent, because what isn't easier to talk about and related to what I'm personally going through, being a parent, working with mindfulness. And this is where I can talk about my personal experiences at the same time as the struggles that I'm having, like I just described, right? I just realized that something just went off road, so now I have to change things. And mindful being is here to help people adapt to a better life.
Wow, that's powerful. I mean, who doesn't want a better life? You know? Interesting. I wrote this down. I wanted to bring up to you. When we were talking before, when you reached out to me, you had said something that stood out, and that was that being mindful is what yoga was 10 years ago. So, can you elaborate on that for our listeners of what that really means?
What it means is that, like, I feel like we're evolution, right? Like humans, they go and they evolve, and something that worked 20 years ago doesn't work today anymore. And I feel like about 10 years, like I did my teacher training 10 years ago, and so I found myself in this surroundings where I was talking about yoga and everybody knew what I was talking about, but at the same time everybody was saying like, but I can't do it because I'm not flexible enough. And so today I'm talking about mindfulness. It's like, oh yeah, I know what mindfulness is. It's like, yeah, I just can't do meditation. Like I can't just sit still, you know? So I feel like
I see what you mean.
So we know what these things are, right? We know what yoga is, we know what mindfulness is, we know what many things are, but because we can't relate it to our lives, it's just that one thing we all know we're talking about, but actually we can't apply it to our own lives. And so, yeah, it's just, I think where this pattern comes through for me when I think about yoga and mindfulness is that the yoga is like the physical part, that it's easier for us to adapt. So if somebody says like, oh, you know, talk about yoga, it's not the same reaction anymore. It's like, yeah, I do yoga, you know, like pretty much everybody does yoga. So people have moved on from like, I'm not flexible enough, or I can't do this, or it's not, you know, what it is.
It's like becoming more mainstream.
Yes, exactly. But in a different way of mainstream, where it's more like accepted, maybe, I don't know. And the same thing is with mindfulness. Although mindfulness is more mental in a way, not as much physical, I think it's harder to apply because everybody thinks it's meditation, but in the end it's not just meditation. Yes, mindfulness or meditation is something that is part of mindfulness, but it's not one with it.
Yeah. Wow. So how did you know that creating Mindful Being, Mindful Parent was the thing that you should be doing? Did you have some kind of an aha moment where you're like, yep, I'm going to create this business. This is what I'm going to do. And this is my message that I'm going to get out there.
It's funny because in the past few days, I was asked this question a couple times. And it's always funny because it was always there. Like even when I was younger, it was there without the actual skill set. And only recently, like I went back to school and I was like learning, you know, about liberal arts, anything world related. And I just realized that everything that I'm interested in reflects back to mindfulness, or I shouldn't say mindfulness, but becoming aware of who we are, what we're doing, being present. It wasn't necessarily the word mindfulness, because the crazy part about it all is that only 2 years ago, I learned about the pioneers of mindfulness. So it's like kind of strange, you know, because 4 years ago, I was teaching mindfulness in a company for a year. And I then I was a learning assistant at the college, and the psychology class that I was doing it for, being the assistant, he was talking about mindfulness, and he gave me a spot to teach.
Mhm.
So every time we would meet, I was able to teach mindfulness to the students for like
Cool.
30 minutes or so, and that wasn't, I didn't even know anything about John Kabat-Zinn, who, founded the MBSR training and all the research that already existed. So I truly have no clue
Wow.
how this even, it was just like, this is what it is, and mindfulness is just mindful. Yeah, I don't know, being mindful, and I have really no idea because it came through as I said, I was taking a teacher training in yoga
Mhm.
about 11 years ago, and I went to a Vipassana meditation retreat, a 10-day silent retreat,
Oh, cool.
a year after that. And just again, in that same time frame, like I've been having mindful being for a year and a half now, and within this time frame I started reading about Vipassana again, and it's like, oh, this is the mindfulness meditation. I'm like, oh, it makes so much, I must have picked it up somewhere, I probably read it somewhere, but it's
Yeah.
not like I'm going to read about this or I'm gonna do this, or
Right.
so it was really interesting to me to discover how this just popped out of nowhere without even knowing anything. And then all of a sudden, these doors almost like, oh my God, there's a whole world out there that is mindfulness, And I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, like how I'm going to, apply this, and how is this going to make an effect? And so I think through yoga and through not having this space of what kind of yoga I'm teaching, I came to say like, oh, I'm teaching mindful yoga, mindfulness
Mm.
yoga, or yoga. Yeah, I think it was mindful yoga I was calling it. And then people say, oh, what is this? It's like, it's just slow, like, and
Yeah.
probably nobody wanted to do this yoga because it's much more like slow down, more like focusing on your breath. And I think that all like kind of started it.
I feel like almost like by the way you saying it just like came out of nowhere. It was almost like you downloaded like this information from like the universe, like kind of just like, wow. And it just like hit you and you just like knew. And you just like you said, everywhere you turned, everything you were interested in, every angle, it was coming back to the mindfulness.
Yeah.
So that just, tells me you're a very aware person. Like you're listening to what's going on around you, not just in the physical, but you're just like, hey, like this keeps coming back to me. What is this?
Yeah, and for me, not like I've never been to college before, right? When I was growing up in Switzerland, we don't, you only go to college when you want to become a doctor or a
Oh, really?
lawyer, maybe, it's not something you do to become and anything other, like if you want to
Right.
work in an office, you become an apprentice of business,
Okay.
so you're working in a business while going to school. So I did an apprenticeship. So coming to the States, it was definitely one of the hardest things to find a job because my education didn't reflect the education here in the States.
Yeah.
So I would barely get interviewed because they're like, who is she? Like, what does she know? Like, oh, you don't have a BA, you don't have a degree. Like, what
Yeah.
is this? So it was really, really hard at first to find my place. But then once I, was let go of my company and I was like, what now? And I had my mom and I had a friend who was like, you always want to go back to school. I was like, yeah, sure. Okay, we'll go back to school.
Yeah.
And just out of blue, you had to start writing essays,
Right.
and take an English class, and you get introduced to what is happening right now. And for some reason, I remember taking this English class and was writing a paper about something present moment. And the teacher was like, yeah, I don't know if this really makes sense. Like, I was wondering what you mean by this. So that was not long ago. And I don't think she knew, but I'm sure now if I would ask her again, like, do you know what the present moment is? She'd be like, yeah, I know, So it was really interesting that I had to explain myself. I was like, no. It's not like, it's like being like aware of what's happening right now,
Yeah.
And yeah, you're totally right. It kind of is so strange, and then also like coming to the States through dance was another way, because I just was able to, like, when you tell me to do something, I'll take it and run with it, And so I feel like this mentality has very much to do with mindfulness. Not necessarily by like being on the go and doing things, but becoming like implementing it and like, okay, I think I can do this. And you don't see any, like, you're not fearful, or
Right.
Not that being mindful doesn't mean you shouldn't be fearful or you shouldn't be afraid.
Have other feelings.
Yes, exactly. Like all feelings are allowed. Yeah.
We welcome all feelings.
We welcome all feelings.
Well, okay. So tell us all the services that you offer, that Mindful Being and Mindful Parent. What do you offer your clients?
So there's a few things. I have now started the Monday meditation. So every Monday there is a meditation at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And I have added one at 2 p.m. Eastern time because of people I know in Europe, so that they also can participate.
Oh, cool.
So that's those. And for now, actually till the end of the year, there will also be meditation sessions on Thursdays, but that's like open to anybody. Like you don't have to be a parent to join those. Even the work, like, so I offer also workshops that are, focusing on the mindful parent.
Okay.
So for a year, I have created like 9 workshops that focus on different aspects in our lives. So currently I'm teaching the workshop for the aware parent in German, but it just started.
You teach it in German, like
but not in the States time. It's in the afternoon time on Mondays.
But you're speaking German, teaching mindfulness.
Yes, correct.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Like, how do I get invited to this class? Like,
you can come.
I just want to see what's going on. Oh my God. I love this.
But this time it's in Swiss German, so even if you might understand something or not. Yeah. I mean, if you want, you can join us. So I'll be like, we have a guest today. I was on her podcast. She wanted to check it out. It's Mondays at 2:30 Eastern time.
The podcast is going international, baby.
Yeah, and so, but usually they're also in English on Thursday nights, 8 till 9. And it's always on 3 Thursdays for an hour every month, besides this December. But it starts again in January, and then February, March, April. It's all through the month, besides the summer month, because people are probably busy doing other things. And so it's focusing, for instance, on January, it starts with the adapted parent. Okay. And then there is also the listening parent. Then there is, let me just pull it up so I can tell you exactly what they are in the row. So we have the adaptive parent in January, the focused parent in February, the listening parent in March, the connected parent in April, the emotional parent in May, the communicative parent in June, the synchronized parent in September, and then it goes into the compassionate parent in October, and then the aware parent in November.
Oh, wow, cool. So you have it all mapped out.
Yeah, so there are like, the idea came because before I focused on the mindful parent, I was just teaching courses, the similar kinds, but less specified to parents. It was
Okay.
just everybody, and so we had like the emotional workshop. We had like dealing with your emotions, and then we had one for like communication and habits. And so I kind of was like, oh, now we're just going to focus it on parents with the same structure but with more specific topics. And when we had the emotional parent, we would talk about listening, but then it kind of goes, or in communication actually we had the listening part, but it takes a lot of time to apply it. And so I separated them and made sure it's more in depth. So it doesn't matter when you start. You can start with the listening parent and then move through, But what cool. I do think is that one workshop is only going to give you a small taste.
Yeah.
Because it really is a practice. The coming together for 1 hour is where you can share what you experienced in the past week, and and if you come more often and some of the same people are coming, you then create your own community. And it's not about that 1 month. I just didn't want it to be every week, because then you get exhausted. I wanted you to make sure you get a week off where you can think about it. I also have the option to sign up for one-on-ones that would then place in that times. Like I have membership levels where you could have like sign up for the whole and then just for the workshops, and then you can like upgrade it to like receiving also one-on-ones, which would then happen in those off weeks, so you can still stay in touch just without the group.
That's awesome. You're creating like a network of parents that can like feed off each other and just say, hey, this is working for me, or like this didn't work for me, or like, hey, what did you do in this situation? Stuff like that.
Yeah, because we all have, as a parent, we grew up thinking we have to parent our children, right? We have to teach them, we have to tell them what to do, how to do them, raise them right, and
make sure they get a good job, get a good education, right? That's
exactly
what every parent wants for their child, right?
Yeah. And in the end, I feel like that this is all important. Right. But what's happening in between to keep the conversation going and to keep this relationship going, so that when they get into a time when emotions get in the way or hormones get in the way, that we can still, as a parent, keep growing with them. So we as a parent don't stick to that place of like, I'm a parent here all the time, and the child is growing up like this, coming slowly and meeting me maybe at 30 years old or something. But it's actually the parent coming down to meet the child and grow with the child up.
That's very interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. So because of what I think is missing sometimes, that we as a parent, because we are already living our lives for such a long time, we forget what it's like to be a child. And so we have to create this conversation again. It's like, okay, where are you right now? What is happening on your level? And the earlier we can begin with this conversation, again, I can't talk from my own experience because my son is only 6 years old. So I can't tell you if it's going to work once he is a teenager.
We'll have to do a follow-up episode in a couple years and see what's happening.
Yes, exactly. But what I believe is that with mindfulness, I'm able to always come back to the present. That when I feel I get caught up by the emotional roller coaster of my child, that I can come back to the present moment. It's like, okay, maybe my child is not receiving my information right now. Let me just X out, let me take a break, but keep my door open. Let my child know I'm always going to be here, and to be at ease with our stresses and the worries and the frustrations that we're having while our child or children are going through that stage.
Wow. So what would you say is the hardest like hurdle that someone has to go through to start becoming mindful? Or like, why do people get stuck and I don't have time to be mindful? I'm busy, like I'm working, I have 3 kids, I have a dog, I have a husband, I have a house. I don't have time to be mindful, Raditia. Like, what's that hard hurdle that people like have to get over? I don't know if I'm trying to get this out right, if you know what I'm trying to say.
No, you get it totally right out. I mean, that definitely is why I need the people to join me on this journey, because there have been very conscious decisions for myself that I only have 1 child, that I do the job I love, that might not bring the amount of income to cover like crazy, things, excess, exact, or like travel to, wherever I want to go. And so it really is something to just ask yourself, like, what do I want? Like, if I have 3 children, a dog, a job that I have to go to every single day, and I mean, that is a lot. It's a lot, right? Like, I can only imagine how much that is. So I think the first and most important step, I don't necessarily know if that's the hardest one, but it's definitely not an easy one, is to become aware. And I just before this, I was reading someone's post. And, when I do go on Instagram, because I sometimes have to check if somebody messaged me, I just read the first one that comes up. I was like, oh, okay, that's like my feed, Yeah, exactly. Let me get one that just read it. But it's funny. So the one that I just read was about, like, she's a runner. And she was saying, like, to the new runners out there, if you don't think you have enough time to stretch, to warm up before you go for a run, because you don't have enough time, then you don't have enough time for a run. Because her mistake was that she would go running without doing those things, and then she injured herself. So sometimes to take time means it's going to give you more time.
Wow.
And that's, I think powerful. Yes, exactly. That's what I wanted to say too. It's like, it was powerful to read this, relating to something that probably a lot of people know doing, running, and also, and myself included, don't do the warm up to go running. And so we can't be surprised if we do this every day to get hurt, because our bodies need to warm up. Our bodies need to, stretch, and, they can't just go run.
That brings me to another something I saw online. It's basically, you can't cheat your hustle. You can't skip a step and expect the same result every single time. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yes, totally. And I think that answers your question. You answered your own question. That is probably the hardest thing to get over, to see what you're trying to get and then missing a step. And I think, like, becoming aware is number 1.
Yeah.
If you're not aware that there are certain things that stress you out, if you're not aware that sometimes you need a break, if you're not aware that, sometimes you got to just change things up to make it fun again, then that's probably why you can't fulfill what you're trying to do.
So, Raditia, do you have a mentor that you look up to, or someone that has kind of guided you through this path, or just someone that is special to you, about mindfulness or just starting your business?
Well, the starting my business probably is my dad has his own business, so I guess for me it wasn't like far-fetched that I can do this,
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's one that I can say has given me that thought to be an entrepreneur and not to be afraid. That's for sure. And then, I mean, I do meet with a mentor, which I met actually just today, every 2 weeks, but it's more to share what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And I've been working with her, or like having conversations with her for like the past year. And she was just saying like she just loves how and to me these 2 weeks seem like forever because so much happens in these 2 weeks. And it's just, I think there isn't like a particular person. I mean, I do look up to like Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings, I'm learning a lot about what he's talking about with the present moment. And of course, he's like the pioneer of mindfulness right there. And that's pretty much like, as far out as I'm going. I mean, I'm starting to, I'm taking part in a meditation teacher training in February, and with Tara Brock and Jack Cornfield, which I'm sure are going to be great people to work with. And there we're going to have mentors through that process. So I'll be curious to see how they play a role in my future endeavors.
Awesome. I can't wait to find out either. So, because I hope we can continue to share, with each other as well, things that we learn or, just experiences. So.
Yeah, and like I said, like mindfulness, even though I'm focusing on the parent, we all are children.
True.
And so from what we experience as children, even if we don't have our own, those can help us to have a better understanding of where our parents came from. So let's say if we do experience maybe some trouble with how we were raised or some experience that we had, and we, the older we get, the more we understand that it's not necessarily their fault.
Right.
But when we are teenagers, it's all their fault.
Right. The evil teenage years. Woohoo.
Woohoo. Get to those.
So can you just give our listeners some tips or tricks on what's your go-to way to, like, how do you just become centered and mindful? Like when you're having a day and you're like, okay, I just need to get it together here. What do you do? What can you tell us?
So there's many different things that I think are very useful and that I do for myself. I mean, one thing that's like an everyday thing, and it's not like to break out from anything, but it's like, and I think my husband thinks it's crazy, but we have a dishwasher, but I do dishes every day. And so, I mean, my main reason is because now we're all home all the time. So I don't want to have like to do the dishes because the dishwasher isn't full yet and we haven't done it yet. So it's like, then let me just do it anyway. So that's kind of like one of the main reasons. But another reason that I also learned, and also Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this all the time, is like just doing the dishes can be a mindful act. Okay. And so that's like one of the things that I also tell the people that I work with is like, this is a moment where you can just be, the running water can calm you. Sometimes it's just listening to songs that just lift you up because they remind you of your teenage years. It's like those kind of things. That's like one. Sometimes is just, if I really feel like I'm exhausted, to just sit down on the couch, with a book, or just close your eyes and relax, have a cup of tea that is like boiling hot and you can't not drink it fast, and just really slow it down. I mean, there really are so many different things that I do that I think are so helpful. And sometimes just to break out, like if craziness is going on in the house or in the apartment, like just leave, like, hey,
Yeah.
I'll be back. I need to collect myself, go into nature. If you can, sit on a bench and take a couple minutes to yourself. I mean, from other people I heard, like, journaling, of course, is a great way, writing down gratitudes, that you have. I personally don't do them, so can't suggest. I mean, I can always suggest, but if you're asking me what I do, I don't do those, but I know that they are very helpful. But to me, nature is key. Yeah.
I do the gratitude journal, and that helps me a lot. And I don't do it every day, but every time where I'm feeling tense, I do it, and then I look back, and it's been about every 2 weeks. So for me, I feel like my reset button, like 2 times a month, I need to just like pause, go to my journal, and just get it out, or just realize what I'm grateful for, and that I need to stop being whiny.
That's a good one.
Because I think, no one wants to be like that, but I feel like it's sometimes, I mean, this is how a lot of us are raised and conditioned, and we can't help it. And as mindful as you can be, we're also living in this very commercialized world. So I think it's just key to also find your balance,
Yeah, and you touched on 2 very important things. One is to, like, these 2 weeks, the moon has his 2-week cycles. It's not coming from nowhere, I mean, I'm no moon specialist here, but I just realized that we just have full moon, and I think it was about 2 weeks ago that there was the new moon. So I kind of figured that's what it is.
Interesting.
And that's one. And then the other thing is that mindfulness is to recognize and to acknowledge all our emotions. So when we do feel a little bit whiny, frustrated, upset, sad, whatever that usual negative emotion that we don't want to experience appears, it's not to avoid it, to suppress it, or to just like divert it into something positive immediately. Right. It's to also reflect back and like, what is it trying to tell me, right? Yeah. Like, maybe it is just the reset button. Maybe it is for, like, I did a whole kind of switch to like turn stuff off and like that as a reset button. And then to really also figure out like, oh, there's a pattern happening, and like, what do I need to do? Especially us as women, we do have a cycle happening, and it doesn't come from nowhere. That it is actually visible and noticeable when they're actually coming up. And I think there is nobody out there that could say like, not me. No, I'm like an angel. I mean,
I'm
maybe.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so that's another one that I really advocate for mindfulness to be less of just this, word that we're throwing around, but to really become it as a practice, to understand what it means, and to really, as uncomfortable as it becomes, to sit with, this nasty feeling in a way, to just notice how it comes and goes. Because if we sit with it, we notice how fast it actually passes away. But there's also this mathematics that they're saying is that when you get agitated more, or you're trying to suppress it instead of just witnessing it, that it becomes stronger and it's been more, manifested more than if you would just let it pass.
Let it pass. Yeah, that's hard for people to do. And hopefully the people that listen to this podcast today, or wherever you're listening from, or whatever day you're listening to this, I hope it helps you. And I hope that some of this information guides you to just a higher being self, to a better self. Raditia, is there anything else about mindful being or mindful parent you want to get out there that we didn't talk about?
No, I think we touched on the most important parts. And I think in the end, it's just try it out, see what is difficult for you, and reach out. And, there's always a solution to what we're experiencing. And most of the time, it is our expectation, our judgment that's holding us back, that tells us we can't do something or we should do something, and that we have to be different than we are. But in the end, everything that we are supposed to do or should know or should be doing is already here. So there's nothing we need to find. We just have to pause and look within, and we'll have it.
I love that. I love that. Love it all. Raditia, how can people book with you or find you online?
Well, I have a website. It's mindfulbeingllc.com.
Okay.
And they can also email me, which is the same. It's mindfulbeingllc@gmail.com, where they can reach out. And then either on my website, they can join any of the workshops, the memberships, or if they had questions, they can always contact me. And if they want anything specific or just more information.
Awesome. Raditia, thank you so much for talking with us today. This has been amazing. And I know that this message will help people. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jessica. This was great.
You just listened to an episode of the podcast, JessSayin. Stories and experiences meant to connect people with information to enlighten. Stay tuned for new episodes on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts.